tonight we're starting a new series called Buried, and that picture belongs to someone in this room, but I won't name any names. And there's just certain things in our lives that overwhelm us. We get buried by things. There's things that obstruct our view of what's really going on around us. They can rob us of joy. They can rob us of opportunities. They can make us feel stressed or trapped or overwhelmed. And speaking of overwhelmed, my day yesterday started out looking something like this. So I didn't have the foresight to take a picture at that moment. I found this online, and actually, I'm pretty sure this is just a prop. If you could see more clearly, there's no variation of the coffee along the trackpad or seeping into the key. So I think that's one of those fake gag gift things that they just set on there. But if it were a real thing, mine was actually worse than that. It was at Starbucks. It was venti. It was hot smoked butterscotch latte, so nice and sticky and thick and sugary that went, all through there. So, Starbucks was my mobile office yesterday because the on-campus library was closed. And every Monday and Tuesday, I spend the whole day working on the messages for Tuesday night. And holiday or not, I still need to get that done. So I'd like to get them started on Fridays, but there's too many other things on my plate this past Friday, so that didn't happen. So I got my drink, I found a table, I set up my workstation, and while my drink cooled, I started working on some things. I was updating a graphic for this new series to go on our website, and I was getting ready to send out a Facebook invite for the meeting tonight. And then I decided to take a drink of my drink after it cooled down enough. I've got a real sensitive tongue to heat. And so I took a drink of it. I thought, well, if I add just a little more sweetener to it, it might bring out the butterscotch flavor of it. So I set the drink in front of me, pulled off the cap. I already had a stevia packet that I got, so I dumped that in, but I didn't have a stirrer. And so I got up to go get a stir, and I took a step, and as I took a step, my head kind of went like that, and I realized my earbuds were still in. And as I turned back towards my computer, the entire cup of latte was pouring through my keyboard and all the way through my computer. So, the screen flickered and went black, and do you ever have one of those moments where you just have this, your heart just sinks? That was one of those moments yesterday morning. And the rest of my day yesterday was spent in shock and mopping up sticky latte and figuring out how to get the back off of a Macintosh, because they got a 5-point screw, proprietary, so people don't open it up. And panicking about tonight, and lots of things like that, figuring out what I'm going to do for my long-term computer needs. So I ended up going to an Apple store about an hour and a half away, and bottom line, they said if my computer is salvageable at all, I can have them refurbish it. I might not come back with the data, but they can refurbish it for about half the price of buying the same machine brand new. So that's what I'm doing with it. Should know within a couple days when the technician opens it up and sees what they have to work with. So I got home about 6:30 last night. Had not started anything on the message tonight other than the series theme, the title, and a couple ideas of what to do tonight. So I really could have used about an extra 8 hours in the day yesterday. And can anybody relate to not having enough time to do the things that you want to do? pretty much everyone who's listening put the hand up. So we've got like school goals, like studying and homework and projects. How often in your college career have you thought, I wish I had more time to finish this? Or, I wish I would have started this sooner. Even if you're a freshman, I'm sure you've experienced that already. What about work goals or relationship goals or chores or recreational goals, social goals? The list goes on. What about our spiritual goals? You know, in theory, God's my number one priority. I wish my schedule and the way I use my time actually reflected that better. So don't you wish there was something we could do about all those things? Like, we all want more time in our day. What if we could get through the rest of this semester with no more time regrets? Or what if we could get through the rest of this week with no more time regrets? That might be a great accomplishment for us. I know it feels like busyness is just kind of built into the 21st century. Everything around us, it's about busyness. But this is not the first generation to ever struggle with busyness. So we're going to take a look at a few snapshots from the life of Jesus. And he actually struggled with busyness too. So these are all in the book of Mark. So I encourage you to open up to it or open up the Bible app. If you don't have either of those with you, there's a Bible in the middle aisle that you're welcome to borrow or take home if you don't have one. Just ask somebody to pass one down if you need it. Mark chapter 1. Mark's the third book of the New Testament. We're going to read verses 32 through 37 for this first piece. It says, that evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. He healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. He would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. As fallen angels, they would have known their Creator. Rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place where he prayed. And Simon, Peter, and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said, everyone is looking for you. Everyone is looking for you. If you ever feel like all your time is spent doing what other people want you to do, Jesus can relate to that. He experienced that. A couple chapters later in Mark 3, we're going to look at verses 20 and 21 and 31 and 32 in that same passage. It says, then he went home, and the crowd gathered again so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, he is out of his mind. Skipping down to verse 31. And his mothers and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And the crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother and brothers are outside seeking you. So not only is Jesus so busy by this crowd that he doesn't even have time to eat, but at this point in his ministry, his family, Jesus' family thought he was crazy. Like, they actually thought Jesus was crazy. And they wanted to step in and force Jesus to use his time the way they thought he should use his time. So if you've ever felt pulled in different directions of how others want you to use your time, Jesus can relate to that. A few chapters after that, Mark chapter 6, we're going to look at verses 31 through 34. And because so many people were coming and going so that they did not even have a chance to eat again, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. Again, they were so busy they did not even have time to eat. And then the crowd wouldn't even let Jesus get away. Matthew 14 records a little extra detail that this happened immediately after Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been beheaded. And not only was John the Baptist a prophet, he was Jesus' cousin. When Mary first was pregnant and she went and visited her relative Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist, they were cousins. So the crowds wouldn't even give Jesus an opportunity to mourn. So if you've ever felt like the people around you won't give you the opportunity to rest or process what's going on in life, Jesus can relate exactly to that. So what do we do about that busyness? How can we manage our time and our schedules better without regret? And well, before we look back, we're going to look at each of those and see how Jesus handled the situation. We're going to add a few more verses there. But before we do that, I want to show you a powerful visual. And I learned this about 20 years ago, and it has stuck with me ever since. Put that up here. Some things in life are important. Some things, relatively, are not important. Some things are urgent. They're happening now. They have a deadline. They have a certain start time. Other things doesn't really matter when it happens. So there's different combinations of this that can happen. And let's test a few scenarios to see which quadrant you would put those in. Just say the number. So if your mom was in a car accident and suddenly rushed to the hospital in critical condition, which quadrant would you put that in? 1. It's urgent and it's important. That's pretty easy. How about when people are having a sticker war in a group chat and your phone is going ding, 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 ding? It's urgent. It's happening right now, ding, but it's not important. What about rearranging your room for the 3rd time this semester because you're procrastinating other things? That's not important and it's not urgent. How about checking your app notifications 20 times every day? I'd put it over here. I mean, checking it once or twice a day, but checking it every time there's a spare moment, like so many of us do, it's not that urgent, and it's not that important. So, okay, what about spending some personal time with God? 1 or 2? Is there a deadline for spending personal time with God? It doesn't matter when it happens, but it's important. So that would go in quadrant number 2. So, we can assign things to categories in a situation like this. What about out in real life? The average Joe with an ounce of wisdom can handle quadrant 1. If it's urgent and it's important, we're going to get it done. That's pretty simple. But what most people do, most people spend most of their time in box number 3. They spend their time on what's urgent, but not what's important. We tend to be distracted by the urgent, whether or not it's remotely important. We tend to be distracted by the urgent, because it's happening right now, whether or not it's remotely important. But the wise person will on purpose spend time in that box number 2, which was not urgent, but it was important. And unless you purposefully do things in that category, they're probably not going to get them done because box 3 is going to take up all your time. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus chose to live by priority, not proximity. Jesus chose to live by priority, not by proximity. He He didn't just go along with whatever was in front of him right now. He chose priorities. Let's see what happened in our 3 snapshots and see if that holds true. So back in Mark chapter 1, we're going to start in verse 37 and add on a couple more verses. It says, they found him and said, everyone is looking for you. He said to them, let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that's why I came out. And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. So they're off looking for him. Simon Peter finds him and says, Jesus, dude, everyone is looking for you. Where have you been? And Jesus says, all right, let's go somewhere else. What? Are you serious? Like, these people want you. They're ready for you. They want to hear you teach. They want your miracles. They want your healing. They want to spend time with you. Would that have been good for the people in that village? Yeah, absolutely. But that's not why Jesus came. He came to spread his gospel throughout all of Israel, not just hang out in this one particular town. So he made a priority call. There's the proximity, it's urgent, it's happening now, people are looking for him, but he chose the higher priority over the urgency. He chose to live by proximity, he chose to live by priority, not proximity. What about the situation with his family? In Mark chapter 3. We're going to look at verses 32 through 35. The crowd was sitting around him. They said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mother and my brothers? Looking about at those who sat around him, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. They might be taken back a little bit by that. Like, did Jesus just diss his mom and his siblings? Like, it kind of feels like that to us. Family is important. That's very true. God designed it that way, for family to be important. But family is not more important than following God. And at this snapshot of his life, his family was not lined up with God's will. And so Jesus used this as a teaching opportunity to explain to people, yeah, family is important, but we can't choose family over following God. Following God needs to be our highest priority. So what about the third snapshot? When Jesus is trying to prioritize, trying to get away, reflect, mourn, recharge, and they chased after him. Mark 6, we're going to read 31 through 34 again, and we're going to add verses 41 through 46. It says, then because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Remember, this is right after John the Baptist had been beheaded. So they went away by themselves into a boat to a solitary place, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and gathered there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. And we're going to skip ahead to verse 41 and might realize it's a familiar passage. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. And he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. So, they've been so busy they haven't had a chance to eat again. And Jesus needed to mourn. He needed some refreshment. He actually tried to do that, but 5,000 people chased him down and beat him to his destination. And was that downtime important to Jesus? Yes. He he really needed it. Was it a high priority? Yes, it was. But then a situation inserted itself into his schedule. He wasn't planning on that. He didn't want that to happen. But it was an important opportunity. Some people call those divine appointments. There's a pastor named Craig Rochelle who has a better term for those situations. He calls them divine interruptions, which I think is much more fitting because they're interruptions to our schedule. We weren't planning on that, but it's still an opportunity that God provided for bearing fruit, for something to happen. So Jesus paused his pursuit of planned priorities. Not a piece there. Jesus paused his pursuit of planned priorities for a divine interruption. He wasn't so rigid about his plan that he wasn't going to adjust to God the Father's plan. So he did make that adjustment. And he was able to do this miracle and teach them a lot more, and it was a great opportunity. But it's also super important to know that when that opportunity concluded, he continued his pursuit of the important. When that opportunity concluded, he continued his pursuit of the important. He dismissed the crowd. He filled them spiritually. He filled them physically, met their needs. Then he dismissed them, and then he was able to go get the rest and refreshment that he needed. Jesus didn't let himself get derailed. He went right back to pursuing that solitude time that he so desperately needed. Yesterday, for me, something important and urgent was thrust into the middle of my schedule that I wasn't planning on. When I was driving back from the Apple store yesterday evening, I was so tempted to let myself be derailed. I did not want to work on the message. I wanted to go use some gift cards I got for Christmas and my birthday, and I wanted to go home and play board games and watch movies and stuff comfort food in my face and do anything but go home and put in a good amount of work on the message tonight, for tonight. But I chose priority over proximity. It was right there, the temptation. I could have let myself be derailed really easily. I could have just disengaged and either not done a message tonight, kind of last minute announce it, or just throw it together and not have it be the quality that it should be. But I chose what was important over the here and now temptation. So I came straight home, got on our desktop computer in our living room, and started working on this message. And it is super hard for me to work at home. That's why I go to the library or I go to Starbucks to work, because I am way too easily distracted when I work at home, but that was my only option. So I focused, I put on some earmuff headphones and just focused in on it. Because I take our time together here seriously, and I want it to be good, whether or not outside factors cooperate with that. So I want to leave you with a challenge tonight. And since it has to do with time management, we're going to make it time specific. So within the next 30 hours, we have within 30 hours to start this challenge. And I picked 30 hours because that means by the time most of you go to bed tomorrow night, it should be 30 hours. Within the next 30 hours, write out your priorities. And there's something powerful, motivating to see them listed in front of us. I mean, we might know them. If someone asks us a question, we could answer what our priorities are. But actually list them out, put them on paper, and look at them. Make it as detailed as is helpful for you. You don't have to go overboard, but do whatever's helpful for you in listing your priorities. And below that list, write this question: am I choosing priority over proximity? Am I choosing priority over proximity? And then post it where you'll see it at least once a day. That might mean taping it to your desk, taping it to your mirror or the wall by your bed. It might mean putting a daily reminder on your phone so it'll come up and it'll put it in front of you at least once a day. Then, keep adjusting to the list for 1 week. I'm not going to ask you to apply this for the rest of your life because that's not going to motivate any of us. But we can handle something for 1 week, and we can certainly handle it if we start it by tomorrow night. We can handle it for 1 week. You can do that. I can do that. And as you apply it, take note of the frequency of your time regrets over the next week. See if the things I'm disappointed in the way I use my time. See what happens to that number, that frequency, as you apply this over the next week. And then every day, as you put it in front of you, oh, I didn't do it this day, and it'll be a re-zeroing in on that goal. So maybe it'll be just what you need to be unburied by your schedule. And just maybe you'll want to keep applying it after this week. Let me pray.